Yes, thank you so much for being part of this session, and I'm sure you are enjoying the other sessions as well. I'm sure you are taking and copying a lot of inputs from the remarkable speakers that we have for the ETCIO BFSI Digital Conclave. And moving ahead, I have another fireside chat with you, and I have with me Nitin Chug, the MD and CEO of Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. Mr. Chug, welcome to this session.
Thank you, Amol. Pleasure to be here.
Just to tell you, dear participants, this session is specifically about leveraging digital for banking in the line of new era. And Mr. Chug and me will try to explore different things about this particular thing. Before I begin, I remember, Mr. Chug, had an interview with you, I think in the beginning of the lockdown, I think within the first month of lockdown. And you said that, this is the time to take care of the customers. This is the time to take care of the employees. And now here we have crossed almost a year. So, what are your major learnings which are going to carry forward in the new era now?
So I think there have been quite a few. I mean, I can't think of one or two only. I think there must have been dozens of learnings that we can take forward, especially since, at that time also I spoke about employees and customers.
Right.
I think what has stood out very clearly is that in this time, the first 2 quarters of the year, we really looked after the employees. We really made sure that, nobody was stretched and nobody was taking any risks. We made sure that they were all kept safe and secure. And now when things have improved, we are seeing, employees actually returning the favor and they're actually stretching themselves. They're all trying to do as much as possible that they can for the bank and even do better than what they would have otherwise done.
Right.
Likewise, even for our customers, we stood by everybody. We continue to do that. And we are seeing remarkable feedback coming from customers as well, which is helping us in many ways in the business as well. So I can't complain. But yes, of course, there were setbacks. I think the more important ones from a overall collaboration point of view stood out as a very key learning, because this was also a time that not one person would have been able to solve all the problems. So it was a good time to collaborate, whether in the industry, with fintechs, with any like-minded set of people, with the local authorities, with the healthcare workers, whatever we could think of. So I think that has also come out very clearly and strongly as a theme,
Right.
During this time.
Okay, well said, Mr. Chug, and collaborative part and the authority, the partnerships part, I will specifically come to you a little later. But the theme of our session, or the event is frictionless future for the BFSI ecosystem.
Right.
And let me, learn more from you about that particular thing. Digital is, a very, very common word now in the BFSI sector specifically. What we have also seen is obviously yours is a new age bank, so digital came very easy to you. But even traditional banks adopted digital heavily in last 1 year. So going ahead, how are you going to assess the digital? How are you going to see that you are a frictionless bank?
See, frictionless is an outcome. Frictionless is not really the start point. You have to work towards becoming frictionless, and all the moving parts in making sure that we are moving towards lesser and lesser of friction. Some bit of friction is important and necessary also. Otherwise, you can have very slippery slopes also. So it's not to say that we should move to a completely frictionless, because the time that you move to a complete frictionless, there will be some new elements of friction that you will have to solve for.
Right.
But all the moving parts in the ecosystem, which is the bank, within the bank, all kinds of workflows, processes, people, technology, then the customer, and then the other participants in the ecosystem who are either carrying the service, or even if it's, let's say, the internet service provider. Okay, what do you do with the best of technologies if, let's say, you don't have a great internet service provider? Okay, so everybody is a part of the same ecosystem when you're trying to deliver the frictionless.
Right.
But I would think that that is more or less default now. I mean, we have to keep improving on lesser and lesser friction, but frictionless is not really the destination. You keep improving and you keep moving to the next version. And that is something which everybody enables, everybody participates in.
So I do understand, the next version is very important and you're constantly evolving and heading towards the next step. But if we look at the BFSI, specifically the bank story in last 2 years, the payment is absolutely seamless now. To some extent, even credit
Right.
is absolutely seamless to some extent. Obviously, for larger loans, you may be having those, physical connects, but to some extent, even SBI Yono is disbursing loans worth 10 lakh rupees, very aggressively. What next? What is the next big thing that is going to happen?
See, we are comparing whatever we are doing today, we are comparing with what we used to do and how we used to do it in the past. Okay. But if you have to do a zero based planning all over again and say that what should be the gold standard of frictionless, even right now, maybe the one click or the two clicks is also not required in future. Okay. So that's why I'm saying it's an ongoing journey, Amol. We cannot really stop at believing that, we have done enough and therefore we don't need to do enough. And with technology, that is always a risk that we start believing that we've already arrived and unfortunately somebody else takes over. But coming specific to the point as to what is next, I think the next thing is that now we need a more inclusive ecosystem. We need an ecosystem where the consumers are also telling us what their choices and preferences are. Service providers are working towards that, making their experiences far more, personalized, and being able to deliver that in a manner that the consumer expects. Okay. Now let's also understand that different consumers will accept and expect different levels of the same service, right? Now if you over provide on something, it may actually harm the customer, because the customer may not be ready, both by in terms of being able to handle those kind of nuances, or may not be mentally prepared to be able to handle that level of sophistication. So we need to make gradual and take small steps to get there, but make sure that everybody participates. And that's why I'm coming back to this whole ecosystem play, where the consumers are a very important part. The second thing which is also going to also start taking shape is this whole consent based architecture, that when consumers start giving you consent to use their data, to use their information, anybody who's keeping that information, is processing that information, is expected to do that very responsibly, and then be able to turn it around to the benefit of the consumer in a manner that consumers actually see that yes, it's changing their experience for the better, and the service provider has indeed done something meaningful with that whole information set or whatever else that they've consented to. So I think we can continue to improve till such time that there is nothing else to be done. But I don't think we'll ever come to a point where nothing else has to be done. So just the example of payments that you said, payments is very frictionless, right? But what if you could just pay by waving your hand, or just saying something, or maybe just blinking your eye, or just thinking about something in future? Okay. What if your payment transactions are kind of auto created, because based on a certain pattern and certain set of standing instructions that you have to have given? Okay. Now all of that is also possible technically, but we don't have a user set which is prepared today to handle that. So we need to probably move in that direction.
I think sounds good and valid thoughts, Mr. Chuk. But the customers are not only looking for a seamless and then what you can say uh, seamless service, but they're also looking at a lower cost, and the cheap kind of things. They don't want you to charge service charge or something like that. But adopting digital is also expensive for you. So how are you managing the both?
See, that's where again, if you try and do everything all by yourself, it is not going to be cost effective. That is where the collaboration ecosystem comes into play. That is where economies of scale come into play. Yes, there will be transactions, there will be certain things like payments we are seeing are increasingly becoming less and less remunerative. But if you only look at payments as a standalone business, it will always be lesser remunerative, and increasingly so. But if you have to look at any digital transaction as a vehicle, as a way of delivering something better and bigger for the customer, then I don't think people will be worried about either investing or worrying about the per transaction cost. Per transaction cost, yes, does come down, but it does come down with improved technology, as well as a larger scale. But that doesn't take away the fact that you will need to continue investing. But only when you start collaborating as an ecosystem, the need to put everything at an enterprise level, the need to do everything in a siloed manner, the need to do everything in a COG manner will also go away. Like UPI. Okay, now all of us are investing in UPI to enhance the capacity, the transaction per second capacity, but you're not inventing UPI in terms of the workflow and doing all of that, because it's come together as a collaborative system in any case. So I think those kind of examples need to be looked at, and it's not really going to be a trade-off between uh, should I continue investing, or should I stop going on my digital journey because I can't invest. I think there are smarter ways of investing also by being in a collaborative ecosystem.
Right. So, I will come specifically about the collaborations. And my big worry here is obviously, bankers cannot, invent a new technology. So it's a better idea to go with the fintechs or tech companies and adopt the best of the technologies. But,
Hmm.
with these partnerships, with these collaborations, what is coming is also a big risk. How are you at, Ujjivan trying to take care of the security and preventing the risks? Because ultimately, then you start sharing your data with the partners.
See, there are protocols for each one of them. So it's not like you share data freely. It's encrypted. It's with some kind of security keys. It's housed in a certain manner. The access is very, very, restricted. But I think if you have to really choose between all the things that you have to really continue investing in, I would still think IT and cybersecurity is going to be the place to keep investing in. Not just for the fact that you're collaborating with a bunch of fintechs, but also for the fact that you're dealing with the whole outside big bad world, which is trying to keep ahead, stay ahead of everybody else. So from that point of view alone, as and when the endpoint security becomes a little more concerning, or let's say you partner with somebody who has endpoints as IoTs, and then IoTs further have a Wi-Fi ecosystem, which could again be a vulnerable ecosystem wherever they operate. So you're continuously opening layer after layer of places which need to be secured. So you will have your intuitive way of securing by saying that, okay, let me secure my network, let me secure my periphery, let me secure my core, which is fine. But then it will make the whole collaborative ecosystem a little restrictive. So I think a lot of these things will come both as industry standards, and will also happen in a lot of these partnership ecosystems when they start coming up with these protocols and standards to say that, okay, this is my standard of IT security and this is what I will accept at the minimum. Okay, otherwise, like we've seen in the past, especially with some of the payment types, the weakest link in the chain will actually create a risk for everybody else. Okay, that one single ATM, which was compromised and had a skimming device there, you will suddenly realize that everybody in the industry gets exposed. Okay, now those things are avoidable, and that is why we've learned from our past misadventures and adventures that we need to continue to invest. If you want to go forward as a collaborative ecosystem, then you have to invest as a collaborative ecosystem also, but make sure that at the same time your
Yeah.
defensive intuitive way of protecting the bank and the database is there. At the same time, even on the periphery, everything is secure.
Okay, noted that, Mr. Chuk. While collaborating with these fintechs or tech partners, and adopting new technologies or going aggressively on digital, my
Hmm.
question to you is, how do you actually measure the performance? That is part number one. And also, since I'm sure you have been going aggressively in digital front, how much turnaround time has been, you noted? I mean, what kind of difference have you seen by adopting XYZ technology in last maybe a year or two?
So I can give you the examples from the last 6 months itself. We, for
Sure.
some of our workflows, let's say the loan origination workflow, which starts with the customer filling an application form, and the endpoint is that you disburse. Okay, so let's say it's a workflow which requires 4, 5, 7, 8 steps, whatever it is. Now, for several such steps in the workflow, we integrated with multiple fintechs. One fintech for analyzing the bank statements, one fintech for doing the e-agreement, another fintech for ID verification. Now, for each of those processes, we saw a turnaround time reduction of anywhere between 50 to 70%. Okay, which effectively frees up nearly 30 to 50% of our capacity. Okay, now this is again at a small scale because these are individual legs in our overall large workflow. When the entire workflow, which again has been digitized in our case, we have seen turnaround time reduction by at least anywhere starting with 12 hours, depending on the category of customers, going up to 36 to 48 hours also, if let's say it was a new to bank customer. So all in all, I think some of these things can really bring down your overall operating turnaround time. But more important is that you know it cannot work in bits and pieces. So you can't say that my overall turnaround time, while it remains at whatever it is, there is one part that I have improved on, and therefore that one part is my success story. What the customer is looking at is the end-to-end turnaround time. So that is something we have kept in mind at all points in time, and anything that goes into improving the overall end-to-end turnaround time, we are very happy to do that. But yes, it's helping in a very, very large manner.
One more thing, and there is this phrase which has emerged because banks are going aggressively with the partnerships, and you
Hmm.
know, it's not just a bank, but you're offering a service now, bank as a service. That's the new trend which I'm seeing, BaaS. Not just SaaS. Earlier it was software as a service. So, are we heading towards absolutely a platform banking going ahead, and bank will, just be offering services along with a lot of partners?
Hard to say that right now. I think we shouldn't see that as a destination, but if it happens as one of the things along the way, I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think if we are planning to get there, then we will make a mistake
Hmm.
because that is not what the consumer wants. Okay, so you have to look at it from the consumer point of view.
Hmm.
Does the consumer want to deal with 50 different service providers because they're all consuming banking as a service from one bank as a
Hmm.
service provider? That is not going to happen, right? So the consumer will want to deal with one, two, or three, or five service providers. Okay. Now these people could be the ones who, on the behalf of the customer, are going to be consuming some services, or on the behalf of the customer, or let's say the customer directly, also pushing in information and data into back into the bank, right? And the bank, in any case, will have its own relationship layer with the customer going. Okay. So I think banking as a service, if you declutter it and say that, okay, payments, clearing, all of that, that is already available as a service, right? All the banks participate in the network. Okay. But beyond that, when you come to individual one-on-one banker consumer relationships, okay, I don't see a time anytime soon where we are going towards banking as a service at scale. If it happens along the way for a certain category of customers, like I said, that's all right.
Okay, most of the banks have already invested now into obviously legacy technologies, but the major
Mm.
challenge when I speak with the CIOs or CTOs or even CDOs for that matter is, and I would like you to give me a CEO's perspective here. What I understand from them is, there is sometimes a mismatch. Everybody is working obviously for the growth of the bank, but somebody is only taking care of the cloud, somebody just taking care of, a data center, somebody is taking care of another part. You know, how do you actually put everything in a streamline? How do you actually ensure as a leader that everything works in an order and there is no confusion and nobody's pointing fingers when something goes wrong?
See, the first thing, Amol, is that all these notions about things working like clockwork are really theoretical. Okay, because
Okay.
when you work in an open ecosystem where you are participating and you are part of a network of a larger chain of things that happen, to expect that everything will work like clockwork 100% of the time is good, but 99.9% is also large considering the kind of volumes that we all of us handle, right? So even 0.1% kind of an aberration can create a upsetting sort of a situation. So first of all, I think we should start from a place by saying that yes, eventually we're dealing with technology and things can go wrong. That is number one. Number two is that when you have a disparate way of architecting your own technology, whether in cloud or an enterprise, or let's say the digital workflows or the middleware or whatever else, I think there is an increasing need to have very good quality enterprise architects more than solution architects, because enterprise architects are finally going to be able to make sure that you have the right boxes, they are in the right place. And if you have to go and partner with somebody, then they know what language to speak and whether it can be done or cannot be done. At the same time, as banks open up to more use cases in cloud, and now there are banks across the world who are completely moving their core to the cloud, I think eventually we will come to a point where it will be realized that fine, I mean, beyond enterprise architecture, again, there is a world out there which is available to you. You can probably look at that. But within the teams, if you talk to the CTOs, CIOs, I think you're hearing the right set of things, that their things could be disparate. But that is again where the CEO has to perform a role of keeping it together and making sure that we are moving in a certain direction. So even if you are moving towards cloud over a period of time, then you can't have two parts of the same machinery which are moving in another direction.
Right. And I have a last but a very important question, Mr. Chuk here. The banks or the financial institutions are aggressively using digital. Most of the times for the service-oriented,
Mm.
part of the bank or the financial institution, the customer service or the processing, which is absolutely fine. But what about the hardcore issues? For example, the
Mhm.
banks, the major issue is the bad loan, NPA, which actually hits hard to the balance sheet of the banks. Are you by any chance, thinking some, superior technology which could tell you, oh, this can be a potential default, something like this? I mean, I know there are some early warning signals and all, but one,
Yeah.
how, important those technologies can be for you? Are you using it? Are you, getting good results out of it? If you could explain, that would be really great.
So we use a lot of that. We do have scorecards at the time of onboarding. We do have early warning systems to tell us, but that happens when you have tenor data. When you have data over a multiple number of years, is when you are able to perfect any kind of a logical prediction. Otherwise, that prediction can go completely haywire. Okay. In the absence of your own data sets, the next best thing to do is to go and partner again with somebody who's got access to data, who has been able to put out a data science practice and is able to predict with far more confidence than your own data can predict. Right? That is the logical thing to do. कि मैं नहीं कर सकता तो आपकी help लेके I should be able to do it better. Okay. Now, in those cases, what we have tried and what we've seen is that uh, for our tenured businesses, we have the ability to predict, okay, because it depends a lot on what we already know, and there is a lot of
Right.
experiential aspect also that you add to that. But with lesser seasoned businesses, it is helpful to partner with somebody who can bring in that little extra caliber of insights, and on that basis have the ability to predict, or even if you have not been able to predict, at least improvise on your collections. Okay, so that is what we have tried to do, and those partnerships are working very well for us. And I think again, you have to give it time. And these are again digital investments. So it's not like you are not investing in making sure that you have a better quality of portfolio and you're only investing in technology. And what is that technology finally delivering? Is it only delivering good customer experience, but bad customers at the end of it? Then it doesn't make sense, right? So you have to balance the technology investments also equally as much in credit, risk management, collections, and everywhere you need analytics and predictions. The ability to predict. So I think banks are doing everything that you hear of in terms of fintechs, collaboration, data science, analytics, etc., keeping in mind both the customer end as well as their internal, how they can manage to run their balance sheets in a much better manner, including collections and bad loans.
Okay, and before I wrap up, just one quick thing, is that how do you see the growth for your bank going ahead? I know that everybody is adopting digital, and with digital, they're disbursing more loans because the manpower is less, and obviously
Mm.
there is a huge credit demand also. At the same time, many banks have also seen a good surge in the CASA numbers. So overall, at one side, the situation of the banks looks really good. Obviously, we are still waiting for the March quarter. But overall, next 1 year, how do you see for your bank and what kind of growth do you expect?
So I'm not going to tell you a number, but I can tell you for sure that what I've been telling investors and analysts in the last few weeks, that we are completely back on our growth cycle.
Okay.
We are growing. December we grew over last year December by 8%. So you can't even ask me that question. Are you back to some percentage of pre-COVID levels? Because we are way in excess of pre-COVID levels also.
Okay.
Okay, January again we peaked in a lot of our businesses, which did their ever highest. So this whole debate of pre-COVID levels of business, I think, doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore. So we are either at pre-COVID or better than pre-COVID. Okay, so which effectively means that we are growing. Now, how much we will grow, I think we will keep talking about that quarter by quarter only, rather than giving any kind of a number there. But clearly enough, we made up our mind to push growth from December onwards. Because we had a good sense of what kind of portfolio impact we were going to see because of COVID, and now that everything has been done, we are very clearly focused on growth. So I think the next year is going to be a very good year, and even this quarter from a growth point of view.
Okay. I hope that's what happens, and wish you all the best on that front.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chuk, for taking part into this conversation and sharing remarkable insights. Thank you so much.